right, you guys. I'm here with Terry Albright, and he is a cryptologist. Like, he studies Bigfoot. He's into UFOs. He's a researcher. He's had government clearance. He's a man of many amazing things. So, hello, Terry.
Hi, Nikkiana. Shall I call you Nikkiana or Nikki?
Just Nikki is fine. Yeah,
Nikki sounds, I can say that easier.
yeah. Like in
So,
Nikkianajones. That's just like Indiana Jones. It's my name is Nikki, but yeah. Um.
well, I forgot to tell you that my whole family is Jones.
Oh,
My grandmother Wiley was originally a Jones. My Aunt Nell was a Jones. Uncle George Jones. Jerry Jones, who is my cousin, is the mayor of Norton, Kansas. So all the Jones family, I don't know, we might be related.
well, there you go. I like the Jones thing. Um, yeah, yeah. My last name's not Jones. I just like it. I'm just like literally was like, yeah, I'm like a girl Indiana Jones ish. So there you go.
well, well, you seem to be. You travel enough.
Yeah, I definitely do the traveling thing, which is
I wish I could. I should. I want to go on some of those trips with you.
I plan on having tours and things in the future. I really do. I mean, I gotta kind of wait till the world's not completely crazy anymore. Like if that ever happens, or even if it does. But yes, stay tuned for that because there will be tours coming up. Um, yeah. Okay. So tell us about. Well, golly. Okay. Let's get into your you used to work at Area 51. Are
Well,
you've been to Area 51? How about that? He's a person
it,
who's actually been.
well, what let me just start from the beginning, which will kind of give people an idea of what went on, and it brings some of the people that they would know into the loop as well.
Okay.
I actually came out to California to sing with the Young Americans, the singing group, and while I was doing that, I needed to be working because I didn't want to get drafted. So I began working for Computer Sciences Corporation, contracts, which is contracted by Edwards Air Force Base, the Navy, uh, JPL, NASA, to do computer work and other incidentals that come up. Well, I started out as a courier, which meant that I had to have clearance to get into every base in the country, basically. So they cleared me for secret and began working on clearing me higher crypto. And as they began working on that, I began working on the computer down at the Navy base, and they liked me, so they put me on another project, which was analyzing film footage that would come in from Morris Dam. They were doing torpedo testing there. They were adding some rather interesting items to the end of torpedoes. And so I was looking at the strip film, which is strip film. It's about 4 inches wide and it runs across a giant machine that I watch and I record propeller shaft speed, our angle, yaw, that entire film it captures all of that on film.
Okay.
So what they do is they get the film running, and as soon as the film is up to speed, they fire the torpedo, and then it's filmed, and then I get it back, and I have to do all of the calibration of all of those items. And so I began doing that, and they found out that I was doing that at NASA and JPL, and they said, well, they contacted my CEO, and they said, can you have him do some other things? And he said, well, I suppose. Well, it was basically done on a need to know. And even though I had my secret clearance, I was actually working on stuff that was above secret because it was a need to know only. And my CEO was the only person who knew that I was getting this stuff from JPL and NASA. So I was working on that crazy stuff, and I would see anomalies that I had to airbrush out,
Wow.
or I would have to send them back to JPL and have them airbrush them out. And what I was seeing, Nikki, were things that were so similar to the Tic Tacs and other craft that we're seeing today that the Navy is photographing and they're finally talking about. Those things, I was seeing those things, and this was in 1970 that I was doing this. So I was seeing these things in 1970 and all through the 70s, actually. So that's how I got involved in that kind of thing.
So do
Go
you
ahead.
think that the Tic Tacs in particular, in this particular instance, like do you think that they were government made? Like do you think they belonged to ours, or do you think that it was literally like they were checking up on testing the torpedoes?
I really don't think that anything we had at that time, and I was working with Stanton Friedman, the nuclear physicist at the time. He actually contacted me after he saw an article in the paper about me, and so we got together and began working together in 1970. And Stanton knew of nothing that we had that could do what these things were doing. No, nothing that we had that could perform in that way. And I had never seen anything working around the people I worked around. And I had to literally go to Area 51. So I was around some people who were working on state of the art. Okay,
Hmm.
everything was compartmentalized. So I didn't know a whole lot about what went on at Area 51 as a whole, but I knew where I had to go and what I had to do, and the people that I was dealing with working on various things, which are still under my NDA. But nonetheless, I knew pretty much what we had going on, and I didn't see anything that I was looking at on the strip film that we could do. There were things that were there that I was seeing, not only orbital, suborbital, but also between us and the moon, between us and other planets. And because I had some of that stuff too, and frankly, I don't believe that there's any way that we had anything that was capable of doing what these things were doing. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I was just I mean like that's sort of like my line of thinking too, but I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page with that because like some people are like no, the government's been working on that stuff forever. It's like stuff they've reverse engineered, which maybe I don't know, but
Well,
they do seem
but
to
they want.
have a lot of reports of them being around testing of you know missiles, nukes, torpedoes, bombs, like whatever.
Well, there have been several cases where they have shut down an entire computer bank at a missile launch site. So we know that they have been doing that kind of thing. They're capable of doing it apparently, and these come from military people who are not nuts. I mean, these guys would be outside and something would hover, and and lo and behold, the entire computer bank would shut down. All the missiles would shut off. Well, they would all turn on and then turn off again. So things like that have been happening for years, but it's been ignored by the mainstream media because no one believes that UFOs are real. You know, but I mean, you talk about what we were doing, what the government was doing, what other governments might have been doing in the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, early 1900s. We definitely had nothing that was capable of doing these things. So the things that were being seen then were not government. There's just no way.
Right.
Those had to be either extraterrestrial or from another terrestrial
Breakaway civilization or something.
race, right? Like an Atlantis type civilization or something. I just don't believe that we were capable of doing any of the things that were happening, and I don't think that we're capable of doing the things that are going on now that we're photographing. There's no way that we are capable of creating the kind of speeds and the movement that we're seeing on video.
So, okay, like, did you ever hear about any, like, where you would get the video from? Did you ever hear about people who literally saw this with their naked eye? Or is it mainly like it would only get picked up on the film?
No, we I got a lot of stuff that was seen by the naked eye. People who would film this stuff would also see it. And what you have to understand, I was getting stuff from satellite and from recon aircraft. That's the primary stuff I was getting, and we were getting stuff between the Earth and the satellite, and we were also getting low orbital stuff from the recon aircraft. So we were seeing all of the above, but we would also get footage from military who would capture the UFO or whatever on film from the ground as it was over them, or we'd get it from F-16 or whatever that would be flying and would get it close enough that it was almost it was an eye, it was a visual naked eye, and also a camera capture and also a radar capture. So we'd have 3 or 4 different sources that were getting this stuff and recording this stuff. So we knew that we were getting legitimate things.
Okay, so you're getting these like legitimate awesome things. You're getting to look at it firsthand, but you can't talk about it at the time. And what was the general consensus? Like, what would you guys say to each other? Like, what the hell? I mean, like, what were you concluding at the time? You know?
Well, those that I talked with, we knew that there was a UFO type craft. No one at that time, still the same way we are today, no one really can say what these things are today. No one really has their finger on the pulse. But in the day, back in the 70s, well, even before, I was working with different ones even prior to that. Like Alan Hynek and I touched base on like in '65. Alan Hynek, Stanton Friedman, others that worked in the field, and everyone was of the mind that these were probably, the simplest answer, right? Occam's rule. The simplest answer is that they are extraterrestrial, because we just don't have anything that can do that.
Right.
I mean, when you look at it from that standpoint, that's the simplest answer.
But it is interesting though because you have it's pervasive. Like you have a lot of examples of it, that you are coming across. So then that makes me like I've been looking into UFOs for many years, and I've finally gotten away from they're coming from Alpha Centauri here or way up, and they come in and it takes them 7 minutes. I don't know. I think like they're here. They're here already. Where I mean that's fine if they're from wherever they're at, but I don't think that they're going back to their home planet and then coming back here all the time. Like whatever is here is a presence that's, I don't know where they hide out. Like we could talk about where they might hide out or what they're doing or if they're interdimensional or what, or invisibility cloaks, or I don't really know. But they here and on Earth.
Well, I think that there was some interdimensional going on, because what Dorthy Izatt was photographing, some of that had to be interdimensional. Mm-hmm. Some of the photographs that she got had to be interdimensional.
So let's go into her. Like you knew her in real life, right?
Well, I started talking with her. We did her. I think her show was in '95 or something like that. I started talking to her like a year before that. I first came into contact with Dorthy Izatt. Peter Gatillo, my partner, who did the physical writing of the book, because I was working on Back to the Future. I did all of those, and we had other things going on, and I was working in the film industry, so I didn't really have the time. So I kind of gathered the material and passed it on to Peter. And we kind of we kind of walked away from each other for a while because it kind of got rough between us. So during the time we were away, Peter started working on the book, and I said, fine, go do that. I'll go do my thing. He later called me back and said, help, the book isn't moving. You've got to get this going. Anyway, long story short, I began talking to Dorthy about 91 or 2. I don't know. I don't recall exactly what year it was, but quite some time before we actually brought her onto the TV show Sightings. And as Dorthy and I talked, I learned so much about what she was seeing and hearing and capturing on film. And I hadn't seen a lot of it. So she sent me a videotape. And when I saw it, I just went, oh, this is mind-blowing stuff. This is amazing stuff.
Yeah, and so to paraphrase, for those of you who don't know who she is, like, I guess, like, a quick summary of her was I don't know where she was living, but she basically would capture...
Vancouver.
She was living in Vancouver, okay.
Yeah.
And she was, when did this happen to her? Like in her late 60s or something? Is that when it started for her?
Started for her, yeah, around that time. She's been photographing for about 30 years. when we talked to her. So she had been doing it for a long time.
Yeah,
She was using an 8 millimeter camera.
and
So
there's a documentary that I saw of how I got introduced to her was I watched that documentary Capturing the Light, and it gives like a snapshot of sort of some of the anomalies that she was catching with her 8 millimeter. And they had a lot of naysayers, and then eventually her children even came around to believing her and stuff. And so,
well,
yeah. So go ahead.
yeah, it was Capturing the Light is all of our information that Frank Longo took and developed into a film. So we introduced him to Dorothy and got him going on that, introduced him to the family and everything. And yeah, the family, the only person that believed her was her granddaughter. Everyone else thought she was out of her mind. So until they sat and watched the video in the living room and saw the UFO behind Dorothy's daughter in the window, up until that point, they were non-believers. They absolutely thought she was out of her mind. But Dorothy was capturing so much on film. She was being taught on her bedroom ceiling. They would show her things that she could put to use in her own life, and they would show her how she fit into the entire scheme of things. And they would show her, they would give her history lessons, how the world had evolved from beginning to where it's going. So
Okay, that
Dorothy was being
documentary did
taught.
not talk about that, so that's interesting.
Well, Dorothy's been there's a lot more that is we haven't told anybody yet. We're still working on I've got 7 or 8 videotapes that Dorothy sent me that we haven't gotten digitalized yet, so it's still on VHS, and I'm in the process now. That's why I'm working so hard on getting my studio set up. I'm getting that all set up so I can get all of that digitalized and all of this information that's on these 7 or 8 videotapes that are totally full of anomalies that Dorothy captured, that she had transferred from 8 millimeter to VHS, and I've got those right here within arm's reach, actually, Nikki. So
wow, that's cool.
We're in the process of getting that together, and as we do that, Bruce Holmes, our publisher, is going to be putting out an all-color book instead of the black and white book. Contact with Beings of Light was a paperback, and it's all black and white, but now we're putting out an all-color version. So that'll be interesting too, to see all the stuff that we didn't have to begin with for the first book. We're now going to have in the second book in color. So that's going to be a lot better.
Yeah, and she would know when they were coming. Like she would know when to get her camera. She would know when it was about to start.
Believe it or not, I get the same feelings in my ears. I've been having, I don't know if I told
I
you
get
this
the
or
ringing
not.
in my ears, the different tonal ringing, is that kind of thing
I get that too, but it's usually after I get what feels like a pressure imbalance, but it's not really.
Yes. I
You
get
know what
like
I mean?
it feels like you're diving, like you're diving underwater, and there's like a or like a and yeah.
Well, I get that, and it's also with me. It's also a thing that you would, if you didn't know better, you'd think it was you were climbing a mountain somewhere, and you were getting
Like
your
were
ears
about
were
to
being
pop.
stuffed up. Right. But it doesn't do that. It just goes silent, very weirdly silent in either one of my ears, right or my left. It happens at different times.
Yep.
And it doesn't happen. It hadn't happened for a while, and I thought, well, what's going on, and why hasn't this happened? Then just the other day, I had an overwhelming sensation of that, and I went, whoa, that was really strong. What was that? Now
I don't know
that's
about,
what Dorothy.
yeah, I don't know about you, but I started like correlating that with the Schumann resonance, or at least I've been trying to look at the daily. For a couple of years now, I've been looking at whenever there's big whiteouts in the Schumann resonant, I've noticed I hear more ringing. So you might look and see if there's any correlation with you on that.
Well, there is. I always look at that kind of thing. I always check to see if anything if anything correlates, because I'm into the resonances and the frequencies, which you don't know about, but you'd get a kick out of some of the stuff I do with that too. I'll send you some pictures.
Cool.
But what Dorothy was telling me, and what I've seen on another video that she had out, I don't know if it was on unsolved mysteries or what it was, but a young man came over to interview her, and she told him about this. He asked her, actually, what's with this imbalance of pressures in my ears or this buzzing or whatever? And she goes, oh, they're trying to let you know that they're outside and you need to grab your camera and get out there. And about the time she said that, he felt this in his ears at Dorothy's house in her living room. So they went out to the porch, and he's looking up and he goes, I don't see anything. And she goes, oh, no, look over here where I'm looking. And lo and behold, there was a UFO, a solid UFO. So I'm going by what Dorothy tells me, and I've never been steered wrong by Dorothy. Everything she's ever told me, not only do I feel it psychically that it's true, but it's been proven to be true in things that I have learned about her as time went on, and in her photographs and that kind of thing. I've learned that she has been telling me the truth all the time. And so when she tells me to pay attention to this feeling in my ears, I can only call it a feeling because it's not really a physical thing. Okay, it's a sensation more than anything else. I get this and I grab my camera, I go outside and I begin to photograph where I think I should in the sky. It's kind of an intuitive thing. And lo and behold, I get things every time I do that. Some really cool things.
So you've been filming some cool stuff for your own self.
Yeah, I there's no doubt to me that Dorothy passed us the torch. I mean, we have had occurrences when we've been out in the desert together with Peter Gatillo, myself, the families. We have had lights flash on us that lit up the entire campground. And we know it wasn't something that was like a helicopter or an aircraft or whatever. This thing was from almost orbit, if not orbit, would flash on us and light up the entire campground. And we'd go, oh my God. And then it would blink out immediately. And we'd see a craft going off in the distance. So
would that scare you, or were you cool with that?
Oh no, are you kidding? I don't get scared by that kind of thing. I think it's great. I mean, Peter talks with me about the times that they've been out with other people on Bigfoot expeditions here and there. And apparently one person he was with, one of the Sasquatch had come around a corner, and this person saw it and screamed and ran. And I said, good Lord, I'd have been chasing it. I mean, that's the way I am. I would be after these things. They don't bother me because I don't think that they're here to harm us. If they wanted to harm us, they'd have harmed us long ago.
I don't know. I hear conflicting stories about the Bigfoot. Some people are like, they're demons, and I'm like, no. And then some people, I don't know. I definitely hear. I have I haven't had a personal Bigfoot experience, but my little brother has, and so has like a good friend of mine. And she said that she was in, I don't know, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, or something with a P, maybe just Pennsylvania somewhere. Anyway, some P word up east. And
probably Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania is very active.
Okay, and she was a group of people, they were camping, and I don't know. Anyway, they had a run in, and I remember she said that the thing that stuck with me is that she said there was an absolute overwhelming sense of fear. Like, she's like, it was almost like an artificially created sense of fear. It was like just washed over them. So, but then my brother, they had some fear too, but like Logan says that he thinks it didn't care about them. It was like a scientist like picking up pine cones and stuff. So it's interesting how like everybody's experience is different. So I'd like to hear yours. You've had Bigfoot run-ins?
Well, I've had several. We've had rocks thrown at us in the middle of the desert where no one would be. We've found 18.5-inch footprints 20 miles from even a path or a trail. We've found hair samples. We've heard screams. We've interacted and chatted with them, if you can call it chatting with the Bigfoot. Some of the people that originally Ron Moorhead, who has a book out called Quantum Bigfoot. He and Alan Berry were in the Sierras, and the Sierra Sounds was recorded by Ron Moorhead and Alan Berry. At the time, Bobby Slate, my fellow researcher, the one that I was introduced to by Stanton Friedman. Bobby Slate was working on stuff, and she was writing a book, as I was saying, at that same time with Alan Berry. And I heard the Sierra Sounds in 1970, and those didn't become really well known until mid 70s or later, even. So I've
Now,
been
are those the
involved
ones
with
that
it, and
sound? Are those the ones that kind of sound like Japanese-ish or something that they're like, what? What?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. Good imitation. Yeah, I'll bring you along next time. You can talk with it.
I could be like, oh.
I think you could interpret. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
like,
that's
I mean,
that's the
kind of
one.
sound like.
We've heard that kind of thing, as well as screeches, screams, yowls, all kinds of hoots, all kinds of different communication, as well as wood knocks, rock throwing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, on into the night. And we had one of those experiences. We were up north of Los Angeles in a place called Big Rock Campground. And we had been called by the sheriff's department, who had been called by a woman who went outside of her little Airstream trailer, and this thing was head and shoulders over the top of her little Airstream trailer, which is probably 8 to 9 feet tall, roughly, I would guess.
Yeah.
A little Airstream trailer. It was head and shoulders above that thing, and it was rocking the Airstream trailer. So she runs out and turns around and looks at it, and there it stood, doing this. So we decided we were going to go up there. We would always go. We had a hotline hooked up between us and it was an 800 number, but they had our number at the sheriff's department in Palmdale. We got the phone call and said, "Get up there. This woman's having a problem." So we get up there, and she was freaked out, got her story, and then we went out to a little campground above that called Big Rock Campground. And it was about 3 in the morning. And we were kind of getting to the point where, we've been here quite some time. We haven't really had any action. We're probably going to head back. All of a sudden, we're getting rocks thrown at us from way high above. There was nobody out there. This was in the middle of the season when no one is camping. So we're all standing around. There were about 5 of us, I think. We were all standing around, and all of a sudden, from way across the valley, we heard this scream. I'm not in good voice, or I would imitate it for you, but it was this incredible scream that sounded like a donkey without the hee-haw, if you can get what I'm saying. Okay, kind of this.
Yeah.
It was more of a very, very, very high-pitched scream, but then it was a low scream as well. So it went from very high to the extremely low frequency that they use, because we feel that they use extremely low frequency to communicate, the way elephants and whales do.
Right.
Okay. They use that ELF. So we're like, whoa. We stayed around for a little while longer, and we all decided, let's go down and get some chili at Sleazy's. We always made sure we had the chili after the Bigfoot search, not before.
Yes.
Okay. So we all took off, and I was the last one. I drove like a madman. I had a Ford Courier that I used to race. And so I'm coming around this corner. My lights are shining out over the valley. And as I come around the corner, my lights struck this tall creature that was standing beside a bush. The bush was 5 feet tall, and it was at least 4 feet taller than the bush. Okay. Because I went back and checked it later.
Okay.
When my lights hit it, it tried to jump across a 2-lane highway. It leaped, but I was sliding. My truck slid into it. The back end of my Ford Courier hit it and dented the back end of my Ford Courier.
Ooh.
Ford Courier was not very strong. That little bed was very, very, very thin metal. It dented it. It jumped down over about a 10-foot bank, ran across a boulder-strewn valley with boulders 4, 5, and 6 feet in diameter, and straight up the side of a mountain at about a 45-degree angle at a dead run, going over toward Devil's Punch Bowl in the high desert there near Palmdale, Sycamore Flats, all that area. Okay.
So it
So,
obviously wasn't that hurt by you hitting it.
no, it wasn't hurt. I think it probably scared it. It probably
Startled.
hurt my truck more than it hurt it. Because the thing was absolutely huge. I mean, I have never seen anything, any kind of man-like creature, gorilla or anything else that was built the way this thing was. And it actually had, there was some white on the tips of the fur.
Hmm.
That very clearly. I'm pretty sure that it was actually white, not my lights hitting it, that caused that. But it literally, but basically jumped across a 2-lane highway in front of my car. So I'll give you the choice. It was either Bigfoot or it was Kareem out jumping 2-lane highways in the middle of the desert at 4 a.m. in a fursuit. Whatever you choose to think it was.
So then,
You take your
okay,
choice.
what do you think Bigfoot is? Like, do you think, are you in the group that's more like, oh, it's a hominin we haven't found yet? Are you in the group that's like, it's an interdimensional alien? Are you in the group that it's like, I kind of feel like they're portal protectors. That's my current one I'm going with. But I don't know. Like, what do you think they are?
Well, the Native Americans would agree with you. The Native Americans were told to watch over the Bigfoot because it was keeper of the forest,
Hmm.
which could mean keeper of the portal, keeper of the forest, whatever. Now, Dorthy Izatt took a picture of a Bigfoot on board a UFO with a little ET actually piloting the UFO, and the Bigfoot is standing there beside the little ET. The ET told Dorothy that they transport them around the world, and maybe other places too, but around the world at least, which might kind of explain why we don't see them all that much between sighting locations. You know, they aren't running through Kansas all the time, although they have been seen in Kansas. They
Yeah.
aren't running through Kansas, Nebraska, and Colorado on the way to Northern California, where they're
I mean, I
seen a
have
lot,
heard
right?
about them in like the Ozarks, parts of
Yep,
Texas, Oklahoma, or
yep.
yeah, Louisiana has had some.
Every state in the union, we've had the only place that we haven't had a sighting is Hawaii.
I was gonna say Hawaii. Okay.
So every state has had a sighting of some kind. Even in the states, like, you wouldn't think that Kansas and Nebraska and Oklahoma and Texas would have Bigfoot, but
Right.
we have sightings all the time reported from those states. I've got a family right now that I'm working with in Oklahoma. This guy's a truck driver, and he has to be away from home. So he doesn't like leaving his family home alone now, because the ranch where they've lived for 40 years, his family's been there for 40 years or better. They had no interaction with anything strange ever. So just recently, they've started losing farm animals. They lost 40 chickens, and the little dwarf pygmy goat that he had bought for his wife, or his girlfriend actually. And they're like, what the heck? You know, where did these things all go? Well, then they started finding footprints that were 17, 18, all the way down to a smaller, like a child like Sasquatch that was with these larger Sasquatch. So he's literally afraid to leave, because they've had rocks thrown at the house. These things chatter at the house, scaring the girlfriend, scaring the kids. They bought new chickens. So they bought like 40 new chickens, and they didn't buy a new goat yet, but they bought 40 new chickens. Now they end up missing eggs, but they always leave enough eggs for the family. They don't take all of them. They just take
Interesting.
90% of the eggs. They leave some for the family. So he's really worried about this whole thing. It's, since this thing never bothered them for the 40 years prior, now all of a sudden it's coming around. He doesn't know exactly what to do, and they're about to a point where they're going to move, because she won't stay there by herself.
So what do you think? Do you
So
think that they're do you get like good or bad feelings? Do you get like it's a malevolent force or a benevolent force, Bigfoot?
Overall benevolence. Uh, there have been times when I thought maybe they were a little upset with the situation and that maybe they were being interfered with in the place where they were at. I just got a story from a guy. I think it was on Bigfoot Chronicles. Uh, a guy was in what state was he in? I'm not even sure he said, but he went into the bush and he followed some footprints, kept following them further and further, and he got to an area and he heard a scream and looked to his left, and here was a small Sasquatch in a tree, 15 feet or so up in the tree. And he'd been following the footprints of a larger Sasquatch that was ahead of him in the bush because he could see the bush moving. This guy, for some unknown reason, and I hate this, turned and fired at the Bigfoot in the tree and killed it. It fell out of the tree, right?
Oh.
Fell out of the tree. And the one in the bush stood up, and it was like, he said it had to be at least 10 feet tall, stood up and howled a forlorn howl. This guy took off running, ran through the bushes and got scratches all over his entire body because he ran through these bushes, got back to the car, got in the car and got out of there. But this thing was trying to follow him. He decided to go back the next day, went back the next day and found a lot of blood where he shot the little one. And it had been dragged for a little ways and then carried over to a wall that went literally vertically, straight up. And this large Sasquatch had carried this smaller one straight up that wall. He said just, it looked like the way the blood was, looked like it had practically run up that wall, which I'm not surprised.
I hope it didn't die. I hope it actually, you know.
I am afraid it did. The way he talked, it was a large round, and it was a chest hit. So I'm afraid it did. But I don't.
There's like that story by that guy called like Bob Schneider or something, and he was killed like not too long after the story. But like he was in Dulce, New Mexico, and he went into
yeah,
he went into some underground base with like, and when you listen to that story, it's just like if you take it from the perspective of the aliens or whatever. So apparently they like break into some underground areas and they run across some ant-like type aliens, and they just mow them down. And then the full story is that Phil Schneider was working on building these underground bases, and they were having some trouble with one of the holes. There was some smoke coming out of it, and so he decided he was going to go down there and check it out. He went down with a special forces guy or a Marine. Goes down on this lift, and when he gets down there, he comes upon these creatures that were unknown to him, that he'd never seen before, and he freaked out. And he apparently, well, I think he, I don't know if he fired or they fired, but he ended up losing a finger or two, and they hit him in the chest, and it split him open. Yeah, it's like it melted his fingers or something. But so what I remember the story is more like maybe his friend started it. I don't know. But that it sounded like you broke into these people's house, then you opened fire on them, and then you were kind of like, yeah, but they made me lose my fingers because but it's just kind of like, what do you expect, man? You just went and I think they said they killed one of them, and
at least one. And I think, from what it sounds like, there have been more than one of those encounters. What seems, and this is what some of this stuff I've heard from sources that are not exactly able to speak about these things to the public. Okay.
Right.
So I won't go into it very deeply, but what I will tell you is that there have been a couple or three encounters that I have heard about from friends who are cleared much higher than I am. And a couple of these encounters have happened, and they've happened in places where we were trying to add on to our underground facilities and mistakenly ran into another underground facilities that was not ours. That's the story I'm getting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Albuquerque, and I I've from people talking about like other stuff that they found like in the Sandia base or like the Kirtland Air Force Base, like some stuff down there. I've also heard, I'm also a flight attendant, and I also have talked to a bunch of people about the Denver airport and about a lot of stuff that goes on underground at the Denver airport. And like I'm pretty convinced that there's a whole underground tunnel system that runs at least in those two states area, probably even further in other places. But
Well, I can add to that.
there, I know it goes to Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada, and all that stuff. But okay, yeah, go add to that. Well,
Well,
first, let me just say, like, I'm pretty convinced that there's a whole world underneath our feet that we don't know about.
oh, I have no doubt. Uh, just what I know about is immense. But we were doing Peter Gatilla and I were doing a KFI radio talk show on AM 640 in Los Angeles. It's one of the bigger talk show stations. It's the one that Art Bell and George Norrie
Oh,
first began their thing on KFI. Well, they had it on at another station, but KFI carried them. So we were talking on the talk show about UFO and Bigfoot and various things, and a guy came on to talk, and he said, "Well, I was at Point Magoo, which is a naval station above Malibu. If you're going up the coast, it's above Malibu a few miles." And he said, "I was called out there to work on air conditioning. I was contracted by the government to work on air conditioning units and repair them and all that." And so they said, "Well, we have some units that are quite a ways away," and he was cleared. So he said, "Go into this particular building and park your truck in this particular spot, and we will get you to the air conditioners." And he goes, "Oh, okay." So he drives into the building and he parks on a floor that was surrounded by the black and white striped tape, right?
mm.
So he knew something was up. Well, this thing starts going down. And it goes down. He said he didn't know how many stories it went down, but it went down several stories. And he comes out in this underground tunnel that he can't see the end of from Point Magoo. It goes heading east, northeast towards Edwards Air Force Base. He said, "How far does this thing go?" He asked one of the workers down there. He said, "Oh, this thing goes all the way to Edwards Air Force Base and beyond." And the guy goes, "Oh my God." So he drove X number of miles in this underground tunnel to work on the air conditioning unit that he had to repair. So he said he drove something like 20 miles or 25 miles, whatever, but it was just going forever.
Mm.
And that was just what we heard. And so I hadn't thought much about that for years, but I was with a friend of mine at Area 51. I had gone out there to drop off some stuff, and I was trying to get out of there. And I couldn't get out of there because they locked us in the cafeteria while they did some tests on the runway. So I'm stuck in the darn cafeteria going, "Let me out of this place. I want to get home." So there was a football game that night or something. Anyway, so one of the guys that I'd known for many years from the Naval Undersea Research and Development Center in Pasadena, who also was working as a contractor at Area 51. Well, the Nellis Range is what we call it. Actually, it's not. We don't call it Area 51. So he was at the Nellis Range. He said, "Do you want to see something really cool?" I said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "Well, as soon as I get done with this stupid test, I'll take you and show you." He took me on a little golf cart that made a humming sound. It sounded like it was run by
Electric.
nuclear power or something.
Yeah. Oh,
Takes me on this little thing, drives me into a hangar that is not very big. It's probably big enough to fit an F-16, and that's about it. Pulls the little cart into the middle of this thing. He said, "Okay, watch this," and he clicks a little remote control thing that he had, and the darn thing the floor started going down.
like a
The floor
Batmobile.
went down.
Yeah.
Huh? The
It's like
whole thing.
Batman's cave, like boom.
Yeah, yeah. Here we are, like on this little golf cart, and I'm going down. I'm looking over the walls, looking at these screw-like things that are turning and causing this floor to go down. Okay, these things were like 2 feet in diameter. There must have been 10 or 12 of those things. This thing takes us down, God knows how far. I didn't see any markings as to what floor we were on or anything like that. Takes us down. Finally, he stops at what I assume is the bottom, maybe not. And I looked to my left. I could not see the end of this stupid thing. It was like being inside the largest football stadium you can possibly imagine,
Right.
underground. And I'm looking down and I said, "Oh my God." And I won't say his name. I almost did. I said, "Oh my God, how far does this thing go?" He said, "This thing goes farther than I have ever been." I said, I don't know how far it goes, but I know it goes to Edwards Air Force or Air Force Base. It goes to, and here's the checker, Point Magoo. And I went, "Oh my gosh, I heard this story years ago." So they are still working on things at Area 51. And if you know where to look, you can actually find the
The debris, like the
conveyor
dirt.
belts. You can see, you can find the conveyor belts. You can find the opening to the tunnel they're working on. They take it out, they put it in piles, and then they carry it out in the desert. But if you know where to look right now, I can show you where they're pulling dirt out and they're expanding these things enormously. And they put it there at the end of the base, on the west end of the base, and then they carry it off into the desert later.
Why do you think? Do you think there's like solar flashes or polar shifts or floods coming, or you think that's just like the best way to hide, or do you think breakaway civilization, or what do you think it's about?
A lot of it is COG, continuation of government. Part of it is that because if there is a problem that creates such a disaster that we're losing people, that we're afraid that the government is going to go under, then continuation of government is why they do these things. That's part of it. Other part of it is to get things from one point to another secretly. Another part of it is probably that they want to literally just travel, not necessarily secretly, but there's a tube train that I've been on that goes from Edwards Air Force Base to Tehachapi. It's about 60 miles, maybe. Takes about 10
Okay.
minutes.
I've seen
10 minutes to get there.
diagrams of what's that Air Force base in Fort Worth? It's
You lost me on that one. I don't know the Fort Worth one.
yeah,
Name me. I can name you all the California ones.
it was basically like from like Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. Like apparently there's like from like basically like Albuquerque to Dallas. There's a big underground like apparently like tunnel that I've heard about, and then yeah, I don't know, but it's just one of those things
Well,
where it makes you think. Um, this is a dumb thing I think about, but I think about a lot is like sinkholes. I'm like, ah, they're like making this planet a riddled Swiss cheese thing. We're gonna have like crazy random Swiss like sinkholes.
well, I think about that too. But if you look at what they use and how they build these things, it would probably support the Earth rather than cause a sinkhole because they always put concrete ribbing on the inside of these things. 2 or 3 foot thick concrete ribbing
Right.
as they go down with the hole borer.
And were
Some
there
of these
big
borers,
pillars? Were there big pillars like in like that big auditorium that you were
no,
under? No.
there were no pillars at all. It's all done with the arches,
Oh,
these
okay.
concrete arches that they put in there. And if you've seen some of the boring machines, it would blow your mind. I mean, it makes the people standing beside them look like ants. And there's even one that I've got a picture of. I'll send you that has U.S. Air Force on the side of it. One of the boring machines
Like
with Air
Elon
Force
Musk.
personnel.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've got their own, and I know they've done a lot of work out at Edwards. I haven't been down underneath Edwards Air Force Base. I've been there a lot, but I've got friends that work out there at Computer Sciences Corporation and other places out there. NASA's out there too. They said that it goes down 37 stories under Edwards Air Force Base.
Wow.
So, and that's
Dirty
what they say.
Reddit stories. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Figure 370 feet or better.
Yeah, that's a bit of
About,
ways, and it makes you go like, well, where's the water table? Like, how far down does this go? Like, I always when you start looking into it, it's like we haven't explored um, down as much as you think. When you start looking at like the deepest holes and stuff like that, you're like, I don't know. There's a lot to work with underground. So that's
well,
where I think is a very likely hiding place for a lot of these UFOs and places and things. I think.
well, there's so many cavities that we haven't discovered that are connected to caves like Mammoth and other
Right.
caves. They've connected two caves now that makes Mammoth huge. There's so much underground that we don't know about yet. Although I have to say the government knows more than we do.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They know there's stuff there. So that's one of the reasons that they're so secretive about their underground work. And I know that there are other things, like for instance, there are semi truck drivers that I have talked to that have driven underground on underground highways. There's even a documentary out where one of the guys talks with one of the truckers who's about to enter one of these underground railroad underground roadway systems, and they talk for a minute about where this guy's going, and he's going to some distant place underground, and they're running underground on these underground roadways that are already in place. So they're out there. We just don't know about
With
them.
that, you would think it would just be easier to do like the underground trains, like the fast speed trains instead of like a road where you drive your vehicle. Um, yeah, I saw some video of the bore like one of the tunnels dug out by the boring machine. Like they have like a road. I can't remember where it is, but there was a traffic jam in it. I mean, like I know
Oh
it's in
no.
California, but I just kind of was like, man, that would suck because it's very claustrophobic. There's not a lot of
Oh,
room on the side.
oh, I've heard stories about things happening under underground tunnels, and some of those are not public knowledge, but there have been some things that have happened. People have died in underground situations because they couldn't get out because the smoke was so terrible
Yeah, from this.
underground. They didn't have the proper ventilation systems back in the early day, when this was going on.
Yeah.
But we need to. There are a couple of things. We talked a little bit about Dorthy Izatt,
Uh huh.
and I don't know if you finished up on that. If you had any more questions about Dorothy.
Well, I mean, I would love to see more of her footage. So if there's anything I can do to help you with like whatever you got to do with that, you let me know because I could totally come help you edit that.
Like I said, just pop on up here from Dallas, and I'll put you to work.
Okay, good. 'Cause that like I think that is really important. Like her stuff was just when I saw it, it really amazed me. It reminded me of my friend Patricia Advant, who I did a show with, and I'll send you some of her stuff. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, it seems like something I yeah, I don't know. And then like with the UFO, so okay, it's almost like everything we're talking about three different phenomenon, but really they're all could be intertwined and we don't know.
I think so. I think so. I really do. I think that the light beings who are, according to Dorothy and according to what I'm able to, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty intuitive. And I get a lot of information that I don't share often, but I get stuff all the time. Feelings and sensations and this and that. And I kind of know, I know what to do. If I do something against my gut feeling, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
Literally a disaster. I mean, I feel things much more than most do. I really do. And I get these feelings ongoing on projects I'm working on and on about people, about things, the whole nine yards. But my intuition about the light beings that they are here doing what Dorothy has said they're doing, they're watching over us. They don't intervene. They do watch over us though. And if they have a way of intervening non-obtrusively, they will do so. But as a general rule, they just watch what we do and try to influence us to go in the right direction without obtrusively influencing us. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they try to give information to people like you, people like me, Peter like Peter Gatilla, like other people who are sensitive, and try to get us to take the world in the direction that they know it should go, because they have all the answers. We don't have, except what we see in front of our nose, you know.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get us to move to a higher frequency.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think that's like a theme that comes up time and time and time again. And I like my very, very, very first podcast that I ever, or whatever YouTube video that I ever did. Actually started because I had like this weird visitation by these four light balls. They were like basketballs of light, like blue
Oh
light.
wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
and they like talked to me telepathically. Like one would come up to me and it would just like give me all these images and like a movie in my head, and then the other one would go away, and then the other one would come up, and they looked like basketballs, and then they elongated to like watermelons, and they were just like sheer electric balls of light, but and you could see like a silhouette of like some sort of like bald, like there was no features, there was just like a silhouette of like a head and some shoulders in inside the light, but that's it, like there was no features on it. And that was only when it became a watermelon. When it was a basketball, it was just like, and what happened to me was I was in India and I was dead asleep. It was in the middle of the night, like 3 or 4 in the morning, and it felt like I had dove like down deep underneath water, and my ears were like needing to be popped really bad, and like the pressure in my ears like hurt so bad that it woke me up, and then
whoa.
and I couldn't get rid of the pressure, and I sat up in my bed, and then they just came in through the window, and I had a friend who was next to me, and like she was in another twin bed next to me, and I was like, Amy, Amy, wake up. And they kind of like paralyzed me to where I couldn't actually scream anymore. And she didn't wake up. And then that's when they started talking to me or whatever. And like what they don't speak English, exactly. So it was, or at least to me, it wasn't like it was, I don't know, like you understand what they're saying, but it's not English. Like telepathy is really, it's really difficult to know timeline and to know like it's not like, hi, how are you? Oh, I am good. How are you? Oh, there's not like that back and forth interchange as much, so it's kind of just like everything all at once, and you're
Well,
kind of having a hard time figuring out how to wait, how do I
you're
organize this.
you're
um
preaching to the choir.
okay, cool. Well,
So yeah.
one of the themes was one of the themes was like they that like it was a whole thing, but like raising people's you have to, people need to raise their vibration. They have to raise, like they can't see you when you're in a low state. You have to um like you literally have to find ways to raise your vibration. That was,
Well, and if you don't, you can never see them either. You can't get to a point where you're going to be able to communicate. And I'm sure that having interacted with Dorothy the way that we did, that in itself raised my vibration. Although I was working at doing it anyway, because I felt that I needed to do that, and I could feel my vibration getting higher, and certain foods I couldn't eat anymore.
yeah.
I wanted other foods more than those foods, and it's gotten a lot stronger since then. I mean, I literally, I can almost be a breatharian
That's what I
now. I
would
mean,
love to get to breatharian status. I mean,
I
I haven't eaten meat in like 15 years, and like people go into the health thing or this or that, and I'm just like, well, for me it's like literally if I put a piece of meat in my mouth, I can feel what the animal, I can feel like what the animal went through, and like I can't, like it's like I just can't that I have some sort of connection with the animal, and I just can't let go of it. So I'm like, oh, it's just easier for me if I just don't eat it. Like,
Well, I can relate to that because that's kind of the feeling I have. I don't, it's not as strong as yours, maybe. Maybe I haven't connected with that part of me. But on the other end of the scale, I'm able to lean back and meditate and literally draw my orb to me that I can photograph when it's here. I can't see it, but I can photograph it, and it's around me all the time.
that's
So the story you told about the light beings, I'm calling them light beings, okay,
yeah.
that came to you, that is so much like what Dorothy was experiencing all the time. And I've experienced the same thing, and so has Peter. And we see these things in their physical form in the skies around us all the time now.
Yeah.
I think you should go out and start photographing. I think you'd have the
I
same
definitely
thing.
I see UFOs, I see shooting stars. Like I when I went to Marfa, I saw Marfa lights. Like I've dude, like I see fair I've seen so much stuff, it's crazy. Like it's not weird to me anymore. I'm just kind of like expect it basically. But but one thing that I think is kind of interesting that I think about, like this might be going on with Bigfoot is okay. This happened probably around this time, maybe March of last year. Me and my niece, she was 8 at the time. We were walking in like just like this really wooded park in like the Dallas area, and I heard it sounded like a squirrel was like, messing around, jumping in some leaves. And like I look over and there's like a little man. He's like a foot tall. He's like a little elf or gnome. I don't really know. And I stop my niece and I'm like, look. And she stops and I'm like, Virginia, what do you see? What do you see right there? And she's like, I see a little man with a hat and a broom. And I was like, because that's exactly what I was seeing. And I was like, what is he wearing? And she's like, I don't know. He's just wearing clothes and I'm like, yeah, and he does. And like so she's like, hi, and I'm like, hi, and I'm like, okay, don't get close. You're gonna scare him. He wouldn't look over at us, but like as soon as we started talking to him, he just was dead silent. Then we crouched down, so we're not very far from him, maybe 6 feet from him. So
Oh my gosh.
we're on the sidewalk. He's like a couple feet off the sidewalk. So no other humans are around, just me and her. We're crouching down, and I'm going, okay, like let's just talk to him, but like don't make any subtle movements. Like let's not scare him. And I was just like, hey, we're not gonna hurt you. Like what are just I didn't really know exactly what to say. And I'm not even sure he could hear us. Like I think he knew something was around, but he couldn't exactly hear us. And then he had this broom, or I don't even know if it was a broom, but it was basically a stick with this white cotton ball thing at the end of it. And he was sweeping around. He was like moving leaves around. He was clearing an area for himself. And so I think he thought we were gone or something. I don't know, because he never looked directly at us. And he would sweep, and he was going in and out of visibility. Like he would go, it was almost like the movie Predator, how the Predator had like that invisibility cloak where you would
Yeah,
just,
right.
so like you could see almost when he turned on the invisibility cloak, or maybe it was like some thin veil in that area we were at. I don't really know what was going on.
I think it was.
It really only lasted for probably about like 2 or 3 minutes. And as soon as like I stood up, he went invisible. And then like we stopped, we decided to crouch down again, like tried to move like a foot closer, and he never came visible again. Like I think he was in still that area. Like I didn't he didn't we never saw him run off. We just saw him like once the visibility was fading out, he was invisible to us. He was just, and my niece was just kind of like, that's cool, haha, la 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 la. And I'm just going like, yeah, huh, okay.
Well, I'll bet you were in an area that was very thinly veiled at the time. You must have been close to some kind of a vortex or something. I can tell you something that I work with that will maybe kind of shed some light on that. Uh, not, oh, I guess it was, wow, had to have been the 90s. I was working with the footage and all that I had done before, and I kind of learned some things about frequencies,
Mm-hmm.
and there was some discussion about how to move in and out of dimensions, travel interdimensionally. And I started thinking about that. And I thought, well, that's very interesting. And extremely low frequencies have been shown to cause apparition-like visions. Okay, if you're working around, for instance, some of these air conditioning units in these buildings they'll start off and they'll go a very, very low frequency.
Like by
And in
power
this,
lines, maybe, or something. Or
well, I know this particular thing was because of the motor would go to a low, and it would vibrate, and it would try to start, and it was trying to start. It was very low. So this scientist in his lab was having these experiences, seeing what he thought might be ghosts. And he thought, this is really strange. I don't believe in ghosts. What is going on? So he began looking into this, and he discovered that whenever this extremely low frequency with this air conditioner would happen, he would start watching, and he would definitely see things that he ordinarily would not see. So he went, wow, I've got to work with this. So he started working with extremely low frequency. Well, he began doing that, and I started reading some of his stuff and looking at his material. And I said, well, look, why, if it's interdimensional and we're trying to figure out how to go interdimensionally, why does it have to be just extremely low frequency? Why couldn't it be any frequency that would break through? So I have I have large guitar amplifiers and PA systems and stuff because of my music.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, let's do this. I'm going to get a frequency generator, a lab quality frequency generator with the stereo crossover, which I hooked up, built myself. And we're going to put this together, and we're going to take it out into an area where we know there has been activity, and we're going to try it out. So I put this thing together, tried it around the house, and didn't have a whole lot of luck. But I could go any frequency I want, and I can broadcast it through this speaker. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You can also utilize this frequency without having it on a speaker. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be audible. Okay.
Okay.
It can be inaudible, and the frequency will still cause the reaction to the general area that it does without being through a speaker. Okay, so we thought, well, let's use the speaker because it'll allow us to work with it better. So we took it out, and for the first time we went out, turned the speaker on, and I looked for a frequency that was good, and we took a bunch of control shots of the area. Didn't get anything. Then we turned. I hadn't had the speaker on at that point. I think I misspoke. We didn't turn it on. I didn't have it on. Then we said, okay, let's turn it on and see what we get. So I turned it on and took pictures exactly where we had taken the control shots, and we got amazing stuff. You would not believe what we got. We got one that looks like the planet Mars, about a 2-foot diameter orb casting a shadow on the ground that we could not see before we turned the machine on.
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah.
And we couldn't have seen it with just the naked eye either. It had to be on digital camera. So we used the digital camera and the machine to broadcast whatever frequency we're working with at that particular time. We've tried different ones, but the one I found the very first night's the best one. We got orbs in the sky, and there was no moisture, there was no dust, there was no, nothing in the sky, in the air, that would have caused these orbs. Like everybody's always hitting me up about, oh, that must be the flash reflecting off of dust, or it must be moisture in the air, or it must be insects in the air that's causing the orbs. No, I'm sorry. You don't get that when you do control shots, first of all. And second of all, you don't always see that stuff. You rarely see it. But when we turn the machine on and we start photographing, I get incredible orbs. I get incredible things. We got one light that looked like about a 5 million candle power light shining through the bushes. Nothing there to cause it. We debunked all night long. We could not find anything that could reflect that. Nothing that could have caused that. So here's the light on one side of the tree, and here's the Mars-like orb on the other side, casting a shadow on the ground.
Well, one thing I know about I had a thing with a unicorn, but I was at a known portal, and I've told that story on my podcast quite a bit. But yeah, like a unicorn, like I had other people there. I wasn't the only one who saw it. And then like, and I've had some fairy experiences, and I think like people are like, why don't you take a picture with your cell phone? Blah blah blah. Guess what? Every single time any of this has ever happened to me, I didn't have my cell phone on me. Like, I think that that is part of it too. I kind of feel like your frequency. I do feel like it's like a whenever this any of these things have happened to me, I've been vibing really high. I've been like super just
Right,
in nature, like happy, like with the kid, with friends, like just like frolicking kind of mood. And then
right.
that's kind of thing. And I intentionally do I try to like I intentionally, especially when I'm in nature, try to have no outside frequent no I don't want my phone next to it. I don't want my phone on me. It doesn't matter if it's turned off, or I don't want it on me. I want to just be like disconnected but connected to earth, like. And I think that that might could also be something with the frequencies too. Like I do think, yeah.
I think you're right, because even when we go out, I don't want to sound freaky here, but when you want to communicate with something, you don't want any distractions. So when we go out on any kind of a Bigfoot hunt, and I call it hunt because it's the best word really probably for it. When we go out looking for Bigfoot sign and want to have some kind of communication, we don't have cell phones, we don't have guns, we don't have any kind of radio or anything else, because we have found that it seems to interfere with our ability to have some kind of connection with the creature or with
Yeah,
the humanoid,
that's
whatever you want to call it.
that's definitely happened with me with a lot of my UFO experiences. Like I've done a bunch of those CE5s, and like I'm pretty successful with those. But uh I feel like it's for you, and it's not for to be shared with the public, like or at least when you're intentionally trying to connect with something, like yeah, I don't know, for it doesn't work when you have your cell phone on you. It just doesn't, like. And
Well,
I also am at a point in life where I don't care if you believe me or not. Like, this isn't, I don't care what your beliefs are, whether these things exist or don't. Like, I'm not trying to prove to anybody what's out there or not. Like, I'm trying to go. I'm convinced something's out there. Like my now I'm already on plan B or plan two. I'm already like I'm past whether they exist or not. Okay, if you're still playing in that game,
right.
have fun. There's
Yeah.
plenty of other things you can research, and plenty of other things you could do. I'm more in the okay, well, like wait, like what are they? What works? Like what are the little tweaks that you can get from other people who've experienced things, and like what did you do? How did you achieve this? How did you achieve that? Like what do you think's going on? Like, you know, I'm in that realm.
Well, and what is it that we can learn from them? What is
Exactly.
it they're trying to
Why
teach
experience any of
us?
this like that? Yeah.
I mean, if they're capable of doing the things that I'm pretty sure they're capable of doing, we need to learn from them, not the other way around. I mean, we need to figure out what they're doing and how they're ascending, how they're going interdimensionally,
Mhm.
because that's where we're supposed to go. I think.
Yeah. I mean, that
I
would
think we're
be
supposed
like
to end up there.
our good evolutionary timeline. Um, but I do kind of feel like we're, you know, I definitely I've heard it and I've seen it in my own like visions is just like I do think there's going to be a split in humanity, and there's going to be like some people are going to go different places, right? Or not even just not like just a good bad thing. I'm saying like some people are literally on a kind of like a transhumanism, like connecting to some kind of like
On
AI,
a higher plane.
a hive mind thing, and I'm like not in that realm. I'm like a more I'm going to be more in like
Okay,
shamanic realm, like the like enacting my own innate like psychic abilities kind of realm.
that's kind of where I'm at. For a long time I've been of the mind I don't really care if they believe me or not.
Yeah.
I have experienced so much that I can't. I mean, it would take us hours to talk through all I've experienced. I mean, I can tell you're the same way. You've experienced so much, and you just know it's there. You know it exists.
Mm-hmm.
And then after talking with Dorthy Izatt for so long, knowing that she experienced all of this and seeing what I'm experiencing now that she experienced, there's no doubt in my mind that we're on a track to a higher frequency for the entirety of humanity. That's where we're supposed to go. Everything I can do to try to get people to realize that they've got to get out of this negative attitude they're in. I mean, look at the earth right now. My God,
No,
we are
people
in
are
mud.
addicted to the fear porn. They really are, and it's just it's not going to do serve you any good.
I mean, the more negative we get, the more negative things are, then the more negative in turn people act. To see
Yeah.
people acting and just driving us down, it's like we have lead weights attached to our feet in the river. You know, they've tossed us in with the lead weights on. They're dragging us down. We've got to get over that. I don't know exactly how I can do it alone, but we've got to get people
We
onto a
do,
higher
and
plane.
it's interesting because like I talked to a friend tonight. His name's like Dan Stevens, and he was saying to me like he made a really good analogy, but I think it's kind of like it's like if you're like a normal, healthy, strong person, and it's like you went into a Holocaust camp or something. You went into a Auschwitz camp, like where they're all starving to death and they're just barely alive. It's like, yeah, sure, you could beat anybody up. Any man, if I was like, you could beat anybody up in that thing. He's like, so it's not. It's like you kind of so like the analogy of that is like you have to realize that from what external forces I don't know, or from what, or what if it is just our own nature, what, but we humans are on this really um they are really really addicted to if it bleeds it leads. They're addicted to just being controlled, and they're beat down, they're programmed, they're controlled, they're very much in this like slavery money system, which is like you like this hand to mouth like thing where they're stressed. There's high levels of constant stress with humanity all the
Oh
time.
yeah,
you know
oh yeah.
and and it doesn't matter what line you sit politically, it doesn't matter what line you sit like medically, it doesn't none what it is, like when you look at the system as a whole, everything is conducive to kind of like not doing what you love, like just do what you got to do to get by, just do what you got to do to keep your head above water. Like that's a very big theme. And then and there's also a very big thing of like, yeah, things are kind of horrible, things are kind of bad, it's pretty bad. And so when you where your where your focus goes, your energy flows. And that is what's going on, is we're having to combat that. And what's really happening is like we need to just have compassion for the fact that we're basically dealing with like a giant society of PTSD.
I totally agree, and there's got to be a way to get us out of that, and I do that every day on Twitter, and everybody I talk with, I try to bring them to a higher level. I try to stay more positive around everyone whenever I'm around anyone, I try to stay positive and to try to bring them to a better place every time I talk with someone. And if you learn anything at all from Dorothy Izatt, the light beings want us to be on that higher plane and to allow themselves to be seen by myself and by Peter and by others. That allows us to know there is something more there. I think even Sasquatch and Bigfoot have something to do with all that. I think that just believing that there is something that amazing on the planet that no one believes in
Right.
helps to raise our vibration. You know, you have to be able to believe in something. And so
Yeah,
many
I mean,
people I
you have to know
know, my
that like
God,
this reality is not all there is, and there's the possibilities can be endless. So that's exciting.
well, that's where I work all the time. I've got to send you some pictures of some of the stuff that I do with my frequency stuff.
Oh,
And
please, yeah.
more, I'll send you more Dorothy Izatt stuff. You can put it online, whatever you want to do with it. And then we'll work together to figure out when we can release the rest of it. So I'll send you stuff that maybe has been released, but not all people have seen. And then I'll continue to work on the new stuff and send you some of that, and then we'll release it all at once when we get done with the digitalization.
That sounds awesome.
All right.
Okay, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you kind of want to touch on?
No, I think we kind of ran down my history with Stanton Friedman, Alan Hynek. I worked a little bit with Alan when he was wrapping up Blue Book. We both believe that there is so much more out there that we haven't seen yet. And I think that all of this stuff that we're seeing now ties in with the stuff that we all did early on. And when we started working on this, I was in high school in 1965 when I started getting into UFO stuff and learning about Bigfoot and all that. And we didn't know anything about it then. But after I met Alan, I went over to the Delphos, Kansas site where the UFO landed in the pig pen, and I picked up soil samples for Alan. I've still got those soil samples, and water still runs off of the dirt. It will not absorb water, and that was
Wow.
in 1973, I think it was.
Yeah, I wonder if have you stuck like a EMF reader or like a, yeah, like a electromagnetic reader over it to see like what the
I've done some work with my what I do with my frequency, and whenever I run I build a gold detector. Okay, the gold detector I use, and it'll show you what frequency will do.
like a metal detector but a gold detector like for
It's like a metal detector, only gold only.
oh, okay.
Well, it'll detect whatever frequency I set the machine at. It'll detect whatever I'm looking for. I can detect gold, copper, geodes, quartz, whatever I want. So I set it at 5.7 kilohertz, and that is what activates the gold at whatever distance the gold may be. So I can have gold that's 5 miles away, and my machine will detect it.
That's
I
neat.
know that's hard to believe, but that's the truth. Of course, you don't want to work 5 miles away, so you work in a circle of, say, 30 feet or so,
Right.
and you locate all the gold within 30 feet, and then you dig that. I can tell you how deep the gold is, how big the gold is, how far away from me the gold is, all of that with my machine.
So what, do you go digging like around beaches or something with that or
I usually go to streams, mountain streams, and places where there's
okay,
a
so
chance of finding nuggets
you're
and that
like a
kind of thing.
gold panning cheater.
Well, but I have like I must have $15,000 worth of gold mining equipment. I've got sluices and dredges and spiral wheels and gold detectors and you name it, I've got it. And I
Yeah,
just don't
I've
use
done
it
some
very much.
gold panning. I've never found any gold. I just my fingers will be so frozen, like sifting through that thing and stuff. But I'm a rock collector. I'm a big digger. I go dig crystals. I look for fossils. Like I'm into agate. I love
Wow.
shark teeth. Um I got a ton of arrowheads. Like I'm all about like I'm a digger.
Well, you'll have to go with us sometime when we go to
Yeah, I would
Colorado
totally
and
love
go
to learn the
sluicing.
trade.
Because when you sluice, I've got like a 5 foot long sluice box by about a foot wide. And I've got a 5 horsepower motor and a hose that's 4 inches in diameter that you stick into the water, and it sucks sand out of the stream. It runs it over my sluice box, and all of the light stuff goes off, and all of the heavy stuff is caught. So it catches all the black sand and all the gold and all the BBs and lead and all that gets caught in my sluice box. And if you try to just pan, you're going to be at it forever. But when you sluice and dredge, that's the way to find gold, because you can go through so much more material. You got to go through 2 or 3 tons of material to find your gold. You just got to do that. So
Right.
you've got to come sometime when we're actually working in the sluice, and you'll see what I mean.
Yeah, okay. You let me know because I'm gonna be there. I'm all about that, and that's a
Well, you're not
skill.
that far away from me.
No, I'm
You're
not
like
that bad. I can
you're
get there.
close. Well, we'll have to get together, and I want to do this again with you.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll
And
have to figure out what we're going to talk about, and maybe you can outline, now that you know more about what I've done. Maybe we can kind of settle on some things that we should discuss. We can talk about frequency. We can talk about gold. We can talk about
yeah, I
aliens.
want to
Whatever
talk
you
about
want.
your Rife machine and all your experience that you've done with all that. So like,
Oh
yeah,
my
we have
God,
another
there's so
conversation
much.
coming up. It's gonna be awesome.
There is so much. There is so much.
I know, this is awesome.
That's when I do that KCMO. I do uh, Wendy's Coffee House on KCMO. She has a coffee house that she does for 2 or 3 hours every day, and she'll get me on there. I went on one time just to go on for one time, right? At the end, I mentioned something. She goes, "Oh, great! Now we have to do another show because you just opened another box, right?" So we did that show, and at the end of the show, I mentioned something else. She goes, "Oh, great! Now we have to do another show." So we ended up doing about 6 or 7 shows altogether, and we still do them. But it's like there's always something more that we can get into.
For sure. For sure.
All right.
All right, Terry, it
Well,
was really nice talking to you, and we will talk again very soon.
now wait. Let me ask you a question first. Do you have both of your legs?
Got both of them.
I didn't talk either one of them off.
No, I loved it. I loved every bit of it. So,
all right then, kiddo. Okay, bye-bye.